do a little bit.
Ash slash what? It's just Ash. Dash.
Simultaneous.
Ash dash. Another one's in there. How are you? Good. One day. You told me you saw you the Is this one of those new Fitbit? Yeah. That's all I need to say today. I was talking to Victoria and her. I'm talking about your. Yeah. I kept hearing this buzzing and beeping. Excuse me, your arm's beeping. So, but oh God, there's just so much buzzing. And then we rented a Suburban to drive all these grandkids around, and it had a seat in it that would vibrate. It was so funny when you would cross the line or you do some of this. Oh, yeah. And I was going, hey, I'm going to cross the line again. I'm going to cross the line again.
I got 3 o'clock. Is everybody with
Oh,
me?
is it? Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to call the work session for the Sierra Vista City Council for 24 July to order. I'll just mention that Ms. Gray mentioned she would not be able to make it here today, and hopefully Mr. Blanchard is on his way. So the first thing first is the July 26th council meeting in the agenda. And of course, we do the call to order, roll call, invocation, pledge, awards presentations. We're going to have the business of the month for July, and who's the sponsor for that?
Alicia. Miss
Alicia. Okay. Okay. Anything, Mr. City Manager, under City Manager's report you want to share with us today?
Oh, well, I'll report more under the executive report, Mr.
That's fine. Under the consent agenda, we have the approval of council minutes for June 28th. We have a number of appointments and resignations from, it looks like at least 3 commissions, and those are all on the consent agenda. Any discussion on those items? Question? The first public hearing for the FY 2018-2019 property tax levy, and that is, I don't have anybody listed for that, Mr. Patuchik. Is that you?
Well, I can go ahead, or Victoria, and David's not here right now. But yeah, it's very simply, we're required to have a public hearing on the property tax levy prior to final adoption, which will be at your first regular meeting in August. The rate is set at the current rate of 0.1136 per $100 assessed valuation, so there's no change there, which meant we didn't have to go out and do any additional reporting or advertising about that. So the public hearing is just to allow the public to have a chance to speak on it, and then other than that, it's pretty much an administrative function. Yes, sir.
Just for the record and the viewing audience, given what the other municipalities and government organizations in the area take proportionally for every dollar of property tax value, can you very briefly kind of tell us what our proportional value is for a dollar of property tax?
Well, I can't give you the exact number, but I can use the term minuscule.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I just want to make a correction. When we discussed this before, I mentioned that the county was looking at their property tax and raising property tax. They've decided they are not going to do that, so they are not going to increase the county's not going to increase their property tax level. They voted to keep it the same as it was.
Well, in context, like the Fry Fire District or the school district, college district, county, you may be talking about, $3 or so per, and we're at 11 cents. So that kind of gives you, a flavor.
That's the ratio.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion? The next item is item 4, which is the adoption of the final year budget. Ms. Yarborough.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, the final budget of $70,092,846 remains unchanged from the tentative budget that you approved on June 28th. And so with the passage of this resolution, the final budget book will be developed and made available online by early October, as well as at the library and front desk of City Hall, physical copies for any member of the public to review. An overview of the final budget, including the state budget schedules, would be posted on the city's website following its passage. Your property tax levy voted on August 9th will be the final step in the budget process then for this year.
Questions, discussion?
No, I'm pretty good with everything right now, Mayor, as long as we have the agreement that in 6 months we'll re-adjudicate some things, and I think we're good.
Mid-year review.
Mid-year review?
Yep, okay. We'll now move on to item number 5. Again, Ms. Yarborough, School
Thank you,
District.
Mr. Mayor. Yes. So in your last strategic planning session, City Council set a goal that would include exploring a partnership with the school district to acquire or lease the recreational properties behind the Rothery Education Center. And so staff have been working on this goal for much of the past year, and we first started by reviewing all of the existing agreements that we had with the school district. And we found that there was an expired fuel agreement that Public Works had, and the school district at this time had also expressed the desire to revisit fueling again with the city. The agreement for the school resource officers with the police department existed. Leisure and Library Services had a longstanding contract or agreement for facility use. So once we talked about all of those agreements, staff and the school district realized it would make more sense to combine everything under a partnership agreement, which Public Works had already been working on drafting. And so we were able to take that and use it as the template for putting all of these individual agreements together under one partnership agreement. This would also give either the governing board or the city council the agreement in the future to continue adding schedules onto the partnership agreement with agreement by both entities. So as we discussed this proposal, both the city and the school district staff, we initially went back and forth on here's the dollar value of this versus here's the dollar value of that, and tried to set exact costs and exchange exact like cost in return, and we realized we just weren't getting anywhere. And so in the end, we both agreed that partnering as much as possible and not passing the same taxpayer dollars back and forth was the best option for minimizing our cost and maximizing the benefit to the taxpayers. And so both sides agreed to simply try exchanging services and facilities, most facilities at either no cost or at cost. And at the end of the year, we'd sit down and compare our revenues and our expenses to determine if the agreement was balanced and whether we needed to rebalance anything. And both sides agreed that that was a good approach. And so what this agreement does is it sets forth under Schedule A that the city will sell fuel to the school district at cost, will continue providing school resource officers at no cost, Schedule B. Schedule C is the terms of the facility usage, and Schedule D would permit the school district to utilize the city's HVAC technician on a full reimbursement schedule in emergency situations. They're having difficulty hiring their own HVAC technician. So much of the significant changes happen in Schedule C with facility usage, and so the city would agree to allow the district to use at no cost all of our sports fields, the Oscar Roon Community Center, the Ethel Berger Center, the Cove, all of our parks that have rentable facilities, which is Veterans Park, Len Roberts Park, and Tompkins Park, the former Teen Center, the Pavilion, and we'd furthermore rebate them an annual cost of $28,000 and provide supplies to the schools that host Kids World programs. We agreed to return 20% of the net profit of programs that utilize school districts' facilities and charge a fee, so Kids World and sports programs primarily, under the idea that if we're using their facility and they're not charging us anything, then it's fair to return a share of the profits to them, and that is after all costs. In return, the school district agreed to allow the city to use at no cost their facilities, including the Rothery Center, Joyce Clark Middle School, all district elementary schools, and Buena High School. They agreed to allow the city to assume the operational and maintenance costs and to invest in the improvement of the facilities I'll list in a minute, for the next 10 years with no lease cost. That would be all the recreational fields and vacant land between Avenida Escuela and Veterans Park. So that includes all the recreational fields, the tennis courts, the basketball courts outside the Rothery Center, and the former teen center. And so the financial impact to the city for that, we would save approximately $118,000 in facility rental costs. That was about $72,000 to rent schools for Kids World and sports programs. The annual rental of the former teen center was $46,260 a year. That amount we plan to retain in the Leisure and Library Services budget to invest back into the sports fields and to pay the $28,000 rebate cost. And again, going back to Kings Court, which is currently out for bids, up for sale. If Kings Court is sold, we intend to invest that money back into the recreational properties as well. We would not receive $11,876 in revenue from the rental of the Cove from Buena Swim Team and about $3,100 from school district field trips to the Cove. And then we estimate the following amounts, or we estimate that the amounts returned to the school district based on the past 3 years of net profit would be around $25,000 for Kids World and sports programs. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions? Yes, sir.
So I guess the first one, I think in principle it's a good deal. The couple questions I have are, when it comes to the prioritization of, say, field use or the Cove, if there's no out-of-pocket expenses, or we're making the agreement that we're going to provide these parks or facilities up to the school district, if a member of the public wants to use the fields, the school district wants to use a field, is there a prioritization list over who would get to use it over the other?
Yes, Mr. Mount. The way the agreement has always been is that the school district is the priority user of the fields after our own use. And so properties far more than they use ours. So as the agreement is written and has been written for some time, our programs would be scheduled first. The school district would have the ability to schedule next. And then there's a prioritization list within Leisure and Library Services for who schedules after that.
So kids, things that we're using within the school district that the city's using?
The sports program, since the city does not have its own gym, fall program, the annual fall recreational basketball program, takes place on school district property. And then there are other sports programs that require a gym that happen in there. The pickleball program was another recent example.
Yeah, excuse me, may I also add that that we're adding to the inventory of fields that we have. Our fields are already stressed for usage, and this seems to be a much more cost-effective way to acquire more inventory for events and sports than building new ones.
No, I concur. I like the deal for that reason. I'd say first amongst peers. I like it for that reason. I just want to make sure that when the questions come up that I got a few good answers.
Mm-hmm.
Any other discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I would just like to, I know this took a lot of work, a lot of effort to come to some agreement, and I want to thank you and all those that were involved in putting this together. I think for a community, this sort of partnership between two governmental agencies or entities is really, really important. And I hope that it'll continue to build a community relationship that's not only among the city staff and school staff, but that the community will also recognize the value of doing something like this and continue or grow in the way it supports the school and all the programs that the school has and the community and the rest of the community too. So I think it's good work. I'm glad the agreement includes an annual revisit to discuss the pros and cons and make improvements. So thank you to all those involved.
Yes, ma'am.
What do we guesstimate our costs are going to be for operational and maintenance costs? I'm a little concerned that we're doing it for 10 years.
We don't have a 10-year cost. Ms. Wilson, have you been able to put together anything in the short term?
Okay.
We're not sure, which is why
Okay.
we weren't able to come to, we just stopped in our talks because we couldn't get to a place where we could figure out, here's exactly what we're going to put in, here's what we can put against a potential lease cost. And so we decided to see what happens over the next year and again, sit down and see what we invested at the end of the year.
Mayor Mueller, Councilmember Wolf, obviously we don't have a budget necessarily like for the fields this year to upgrade, and we weren't really envisioning a lot of usage this fiscal year. What we're first envisioning is a cleanup of the property. As you drive by there, you can see a lot of weeds, a lot of old fencing, just, general maintenance that needs to be done to improve the attractiveness, to prepare it for usage. We will come back with cost estimates for maintenance of those particular fields in next year's budget. So right now we're going to work with the existing budget to do what we can. And Laura?
I can actually add to that there's a lot of grant opportunities out there, and a lot of funding agencies like to see different government agencies like schools and cities coming together to leverage usage. One of the things that a lot of the granting agencies like to see is a long-term lease option. So they want to know that we will have some operational control, or that this will be into place for the full tenure, which is maximum by law for a long-term lease. So that also puts us in a really good position to go after some of these grants that are looking for partnerships like this as well.
So, and I'm looking through the cancellation piece here. So the termination of the cancellation, unless I'm missing something, is pretty specific as to the reasons why we could. But if we're revisiting it every year, are we still going to be locked into a commitment for a longer duration outside of our ability to terminate based on the provisions underneath, my Roman numerals are off, I think it's 6 alpha. 9 alpha, I'm sorry. So in other words, as we know right now, we don't have a budget for something like this yet. We don't know what the costs will be yet. So at what point what is our avenues to break agreement if need be outside of this termination clause?
Well, the avenue is the clause in the agreement, Councilmember Mount. So we revisit if council determines it's not an agreement you want to continue to pursue, then obviously we would give notice per the clause in the agreement.
So where it says contrary to mission or operations for such party, that is pretty much whatever we deem to be appropriate.
Yes.
To be contrary to our mission or our objectives or theirs, vice versa.
They could make the same determination on their end.
And what happens if we've already put money into, say, bringing those fields up to a level of suitability, and 5 years down the road they say, hey, in 48 hours we're taking it all back. Is that something that we can?
Well, the terms of the partnership agreement as a whole are each party has to terminate by written notice with at least 60 days notice to the other party. So that's on page 2 of the overall partnership agreement.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of add on to what I think where Craig is going with that too. So if the district should decide, they want to do something different, that 60 to 90 days, or 90 days, is it? 60 days. gives both parties an opportunity to sit at the table again and maybe come to some agreement that would mitigate the reason why they want to end it.
Well, the way I envision this, Councilmember Calhoun, is, in year one, we're not going to be putting in a lot of capital investment. I think it's important to have the annual meeting with the parties to determine, if the school district does want to proceed with some other plan for the property, say they want to sell it or that kind of thing. So we want to be very cautious in terms of, any capital investments that we want to make, things like lighting or those kind of things, which might be very expensive, which would enhance the property, but not necessarily be very recoverable in the event that they wanted to proceed in a different direction. Right now, I have no indication from the school district that they have any other usage planned for the property at this point in time. And I think it will prove to be a very good agreement. I think there are a number of other fruitful avenues for cooperation that we can explore if this works. And it's something that we've been working towards for a very, very long time, not just the last year that staff has been working on negotiating with them. So I think it does bring both entities closer together. I think there is a lot of opportunities to explore, and I appreciate outgoing Superintendent Hagerl and the school board's cooperation in this effort. I think it's a big, big step forward.
Did the school board already approve the agreement?
Mayor Miller, Councilmember Calhoun, yes, they have. With a couple what you have in front of you has a couple minor changes from what the school board has already unanimously approved. There was a provision for they wanted a waiver of sewer fees, which I felt was kind of not a very good precedent to set. Others may want to come and ask the council for that kind of thing, and being an enterprise fund, I didn't think that was appropriate. So we changed it to the cash value, $28,000, which was a similar amount. So it'll come as an offset off the contract. As Victoria mentioned, we're going to be somewhere around $100,000 a year in rental costs for this, which can go a long ways towards helping us with O&M costs in the future.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I just have one last question, and maybe I just don't understand the prioritization issue. Since we will be operating and maintaining the fields for the school district, does the city then get precedence over the school district, or does the school district get precedence over their fields, not our fields that we own as a city?
Well, Councilmember Wolf, I think there's some very specific examples of where the school district needs precedence. The Cove is the best example of that, where the swim team has a certain season. We have been giving them priority usage of the Cove, during swim season. They also have middle school baseball season. We've been using the field outside the teen center. Those are very specific examples of where they kind of need to have precedence for usage. But I don't think there'll be many other conflicts with them beyond those types of things.
Okay. Any other discussion? Thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 6, park amendments, and that is Mrs. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last month, I had a member of the public reach out to me, and he wanted to enjoy his hobby of metal detecting in our city parks. And so this nice gentleman sent me an email, and I had a good phone call with him. And upon review of the Code of Ordinances, I found that all metal detecting was prohibited in public parks. So I took the issue to our Park and Recreation Commission, asking them why we had the prohibition of the metal detecting, and the root cause of that request was due to the digging. So sometimes metal detecting, they'll get something and then they'll want to dig about 4 inches in the ground. And so I drafted some language for the commission to review, which removed the prohibition and allowed a new section allowing surface detection only. So they will not be allowed to dig. And this is a very small amendment to this, but will allow some people to enjoy their hobbies for your consideration.
And the reason for digging is a couple. One is most parks we do have sprinkler systems. Correct. That we don't want dug up, or other things underground. And obviously, if we have places that are sodded and the sod's not replaced properly, it interferes with the maintenance.
Thank you. I don't generally just want to deal with punishment and stuff like that, but how will that be resolved should someone, we go in there and find there has been digging? Is there any resolution for that sort of, or what's the right terms for that?
Councilmember Calhoun, I think the police chief can back me up that they do receive phone calls for people metal detecting in the park.
Okay.
Yes, whether or not they're digging or not right now, it is just strictly prohibited. And so this just seemed like, allowing somebody to enjoy their hobby, but we hope that they follow the rules, and if not, I'm sure that someone will be calling the good chief to make a complaint.
Okay. Will that also be added to that posters?
That was my question.
Oh, why don't you go ahead?
Oh. We have a sign with a number of things that are prohibited in the park.
Yes.
Will this be added?
Yes, we have a lot of ordinance revisions that we need to make to all of our signs in the park, and this will be added to that.
Anybody else? All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. All right, so that concludes the events for Thursday. We'll now move to discussion on moving the work sessions back, to the city manager's conference room. This was brought up by Mrs. Calhoun. One of the concerns I have on this is making sure that we can still broadcast while we're down there and make sure that everybody's covered. So, Ms. Calhoun, you want to introduce this?
Well, I don't have a lot to say about it, except it was kind of a selfish thing at first, because as I discuss issues, I like to be able to see the people that I'm talking to, and I think an oval table is a nice way to do that, to be able to make eye contact or read body language and so on and so forth. So that was one thing that occurred to me. As we sit here, it's very difficult to always see the people that are talking or that we're speaking to. We used to meet down there about, 8 years ago? I think we've been up here quite a while about that. And other than the room being small, it did provide a more intimate setting for conversation, whether it was among council members or even with the public, to just have that more conversational spirit of the room, atmosphere. So that was what provoked me to request the council's opinion about moving. And the being able to be seen by the public was also important. I spoke to Assistant City Manager, and I think the City Manager also just, is this possible? Can we do this where the public can still be a part of the meeting through video? And I've been assured that's possible. Do you want to say any more about that?
Let me address it.
Okay.
Mayor Mueller, Councilmember Calhoun, I appreciate that. As you recalled, we did used to have the meetings here, and it was determined primarily because of the media coverage and the television on Cox that the council wanted to move the meetings here. There's been a lot of changes in technology, obviously, since then. But we do have some practical considerations that I want to add to the discussion for your consideration. Our television system in the back room there could go out at any time. It could go out during this meeting. And the bringing that up to snuff and repairing it or buying new equipment is going to be a six-figure proposition. Probably on the order of about a couple $100,000 to do that. So, it's our hope that it does keep going, but it could go out at any time. So it would be good to have backup plans in place. The cost for doing streaming downstairs and the cameras, we estimate at around $10,000. We can then stream your meetings in the conference room live and also keep the tapes and then send those to Cox for viewing at a later time. So I think we can still have coverage there. In the event we do have problems with the cameras in the back there, we're probably looking at an additional $20,000 to put in a similar system here in the council chambers so that we can still continue to televise the meetings. So they're a lot less costly alternatives than repairing the system that we currently have, and will give us some good backup. So those are just some practical considerations for you.
Discussion. I'm just looking for a consensus of council.
How many people, I know I've been in the room and I should know this, but how many members of the public can actually fit into that room?
What size?
Councilmember Wolf, probably
The average size person.
probably about 15 comfortably. We can cram a few more in there, but there's a lot of times where we can kind of have a pretty good idea that there will be more members of the public attending a meeting, in which case it's very simple for us to redirect the meeting upstairs here, and Ms. Adams can notice it that way as well. So, we do have always have the backup of coming back upstairs in the event that we have a larger crowd than normal.
My feelings on it, I actually agree with Councilmember Calhoun. I think it would be really nice to kind of foster sort of a different discussion, and as long as it can be streamed, that's my big deal. As long as the public can still be aware of what we're doing and what we're talking about, and that they can still actually be present as well. And my concerns seem to be answered, and I do like the idea of being able to have a backup in case something happens.
What was the cost again for streaming downstairs?
For downstairs, we're talking, Ms. Ash, about $10,000 and probably another $20,000 to do this room.
Is that an annual cost or?
Most of those costs are fixed costs for buying the equipment. I think the ongoing costs for streaming would be far less. So I don't think it would be too onerous for us to do that.
Let me just go back to you mentioned there would be tapes. I'm not sure what the language is for digital things like that, but that would go to Cox to be shown for folks who are used to watching it on TV. Otherwise, it's available on computers or live, you said. Oh.
Yeah, the streaming would be live. I imagine whatever we could work out with Cox would probably be hopefully within the next 24 hours or something like that, where we, one of the provisions I asked Mr. Rubio to come up with was to make sure that we could send content over to Cox for viewing.
The costs seem to outweigh the benefits to me, but as an alternative, I could suggest we can put a table right here. And
well, one of the challenges, I think it's a concern of the city manager, and we've talked about this for a couple of years now. Based on the age and the type of equipment that is in the back room, replacing that would be very expensive, and it could go out, as he said, at any time. So having the ability to spend a lot less money to get the same quality product, I think is worth pursuing at least. Whether we meet here or whether we meet down there doesn't make all that much difference to me, but it'd be nice to have the capability to do it in 2 locations.
I think too, Mr. Mayor and Ms. Ash, we actually have attempted to do tables, here in this area, and because of the way the system works and the way the cameras are right now, we would still face costs in terms of improving, the visual quality of the meetings, even if we did move tables to the front of the dais.
right.
Anybody else?
Yeah, and look, I don't really have a preference of where we do a work session as long as we're doing work. I mean, that's the long pole in the tent, I guess. I think the requirements, though, are we have to be able to broadcast it. We have to be able to make sure that there's room for the people who want to show up and attend live. We have to be able to do our work without it turning into being so informal that nothing gets done. So those are just generally, I think if we start from that perspective, is the requirements from council, in my opinion, are we can broadcast, we can record it, it can be saved down, we can allow people in and out, we have enough room for everybody who wants to be there, then I'm sure you guys will be able to figure out how to scope it out, schedule, get costs, et cetera. I don't really I don't think we should spend $100,000 to replace old technology with old technology, and I think that we can certainly do it for cheaper. I don't think that the cost of or worrying about this setup going out is something that I would consider into this discussion as much, because we're going to have to replace it anyways if it goes out, because we're going to have the same requirements for the formal meetings anyways. So, you know, we're not going to do formal meetings without some way to meet those requirements. But it's up to you guys. I mean, if this is what helps us do better work and work sessions, and that's what it is, then I support it. And as long as those requirements are met along the way, then great.
We'll go. I saw her hand first. Sorry, Christine.
Oh.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. I just want to understand, if we do streaming downstairs, what keeps us from doing streaming up here and not replacing all that?
Just an additional cost.
Nothing
really prevents.
But it's not the 100. It's not the triple.
No, it would not be. We're talking about the equipment, the consoles that are in there, the cameras. You know, there are times during the meetings when a camera will go out, and then suddenly you have a long view, or you will lose audio. Those things happen more often than maybe we think. So I think having more reliable, up-to-date equipment would be, a good thing.
Yes, ma'am.
And my question for this would be, is it possible to have a cost analysis before we actually make a decision? And I was going to actually make the same point. I know from looking back at the work sessions and things, I know that they do go out. So I do think it is probably only a matter of time before we do have to replace this equipment no matter what. And I would like to see what the cost-benefit analysis is actually going to do, because if we can stream it and replace everything for considerably cheaper than replacing this, I think it would be definitely at least worthwhile to look at.
We can absolutely do that.
So, I think what I'm hearing from everybody is that we don't have a problem moving downstairs as long as we can meet the same requirements as we do when we operate upstairs. So what I'd do then is I charge the staff. You need to obviously come up with a cost analysis for this room as well. But basically, you need to proceed on getting the other conference room set up and operational, and then give us a date as to when we can start our meetings down there.
Okay, and we're going to keep our fingers crossed that this room stays
continue operational. Yeah,
Mayor,
exactly.
Mr. Mayor, we talk about using the conference room downstairs. Is it possible there's a better place than that, where we could still use a boardroom table? And is there any better space in the building?
We probably have better space in one of the other buildings, but not in this building.
In this building.
May I make a recommendation, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Since that's actually a really good question, and my belief is that there's not a better room in this building than this place to put everybody in and get to work. And if we really wanted to look at cost savings down the line, instead of even worrying about the secondary room, unless it's an absolute backup that's required, and we're worried about this equipment going out as being one of the reasons to consider even the other room, and not to mention, maybe some of the other comforts that come with being in a more intimate setting, why don't we just budget for and prepare for the inevitable and just stay here until that happens, and then just rework all that? I mean, it'll save us $10,000 net. I mean,
I don't really have a problem with prioritizing this room first, is what you're suggesting. We prioritize this room first. And again, I'm not sure where the money's going to come from. You and I talked about coming out of the IT budget for $10 grand, getting $20 grand or so out of the IT budget, maybe a little bit more of a squeeze. But again, you're recommending intimacy around the table. If we get rid of fixed cameras and we bring a table up here, that might do it. I don't know.
Yes, they can look into all of that.
Yeah, we'll look into all the options.
And give us a recommendation. Mm-hmm. That's a good point, Greg. Thanks. Okay.
Jill, sorry.
Jill?
Mr. Mayor, I would point out that one of the biggest problems having the meetings at tables in this room were microphones, not cameras, because you had to use handheld mics and pass them around, and that became kind of problematic. because people were waiting for mics or
And you
they
couldn't,
weren't
and you couldn't
working,
record
couldn't-
properly, et cetera. Yeah.
And so that was part of the problem with the
Okay.
tables up here. It wasn't necessarily the cameras.
Gotcha. Okay, another consideration. Thanks, Jill. Anything else on this item?
Can you repeat what the consensus is?
Well, the consensus is Chuck's gonna go back and see about, when we need to make this shift. He's gonna come up with a plan for, I guess, two options. One is for it up here immediately, before everything breaks out. And the other option is to do it downstairs. And he's gonna let us know when we can execute either one of those, and he owes cost analysis along with it, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
So then this item will come back to
It'll
us
come
and
back
we
to
can have
us
further discussion.
for further discussion.
Okay, I'm fine with that. That's great.
Okay, so Chuck, did you get enough guidance?
Yep.
I thought you did. Yeah, I thought you had.
Clear as
Okay.
can be.
Clear as can be, okay. We'll now move on to item C, which I guess we're going to talk about the programs for council meet and greet and the social service agencies. And that's Gwen, this is your lead.
Okay. Well, I wanted to just kind of ask council where they stand or sit on the issue of having regular meet and greets. Those have been in the past an opportunity for city council members to be at a location where the public is aware that we're going to be there, and have an opportunity to come to us to meet us, or to have specific questions, or looking for information. And we've done it a variety of ways. We've met in the lobby at the library. We've met on occasion at actually private entities. We met one time at one of the apartment building rooms where their patrons can gather. And we've met in restaurants and just been there for the public to meet with us. Of late, in the last year or so, that our attendance and everything else has kind of fallen off. And we haven't found new places to meet, but we haven't been meeting much at all. So I brought this up because I have to admit that I enjoy having these opportunities to, I'm a talker, that I enjoy having these opportunities to meet with the public who I might not otherwise see, even though many of us are out there for various occasions anyway. But so the meet and greet has always been just something I enjoy doing. And several of us have attended those, and I'd like to just know what the feeling is. Should we continue? What do you want to do? Because it's fallen off of late, people attending and locations to have it.
So if when council ever decides that council wants to do more meet and greets, I don't think anybody on council's ever shied away from going to a meet and greet. I don't think having regularly scheduled meet and greets will yield any greater benefit than what we've already been doing. I mean, you and I know Miss Ash and Rachel and I, we were at a couple, and so were you. I mean, we've all been to them where we've literally had nobody show up. And so your time is valuable, my time is valuable, the public's time is valuable. I know that all of us are involved in the community. All of us get out and we have people that we do see and we do talk to. I mean, the one thing that we passed today was a direct result of somebody in the community reaching out through other means than just face-to-face media. They actually came up over social media on that, and it got pushed over and it got done. So I think there's probably other ways that we can look about it. I don't really seem to have a problem with how we do it now. I just haven't seen as much value as maybe I'd like to see. But I don't think making it a regularly occurring standing commitment would be something that would increase value either, because then it almost becomes an expectation that we're always going to be there and don't worry, I'll get them next time. I'd almost rather have it be, this is when we're going to do it, and if you got some concerns, come out and talk to us. But we're going to be at all these major events anyways. I mean, I see all of y'all at every major event that goes on within. I just don't like the idea of having it regularly scheduled because I think it gives people more excuses to not go because they'll just hit the next one because council will just be there waiting. And I don't know if there's a value in that. I would invite the public directly in whichever way you want, and typically you'll get an answer, and we can solve if it's an emergency or a major crisis. We deal with it. And we work for you that way. We don't have to be waiting for you, the third week every Wednesday in a mall somewhere for you to show up.
Christine, did you have something you want to say?
I'm just sort of I'm thinking inside of my head right now. Do you think it would be better, instead of doing the meet and greets, if we replaced a couple of them with more of the town hall feel?
Yes.
I felt like when we did that for the kids that Ms. Ash set up, or that we did for the budget, I thought that went really well, and I had a lot of really good feedback about that. So I wonder if something like that might be a better approach than the meet and greet, and then people can submit questions and do it that way.
I concur with that more than a meet and greet.
Well, I see the value in both. The casualness of the meet and greet is appealing to some folks. Also, having it in a place where there is natural traffic is also of benefit. There have been enough comments that I've heard related to just, there are a lot of folks who have no contact with City Council at all and who don't realize that we're pretty approachable folks, that we're everyday neighbors to the community, but who've never had that contact. And I think that's one of the values of the meet and greet. And it's informal, so you don't have to feel like you have to be a certain way in order to be at a meet and greet. So I think the value of the town hall, although I have not been to the town hall, is a good way for a specific topic to be dealt with. But I'd just like to put in a word for continuing. I understand your concerns about regular, and we really have not done that for quite a while, had them on any particular regular basis. So we can explore what would be considered a good location for it and a good time to do it, and maybe consider some number a year that we would try to be available to the public in that way, either through meet and greet or through town hall. And town hall is especially valuable when there's a really hot topic, I think, where folks may have lots of opinions to express. So I'm not sure where we are with that. Anybody, Bob?
I don't really have a solution. I like all of the options that have been offered. I think one of the difficult things about the meet and greet was that it's very difficult to get all of us together on one day, so that was challenging. And I will say personally, offering the opportunity to come meet with me is kind of value in and of itself. The fact that nobody showed up was sometimes was a little bit disappointing, but what concerns me about that is not my personal time, but staff time that it takes to set everything up and bring over handouts. So I just wanted to add that perspective to the conversation as well. I was I was happy with the town hall that we had with the Youth Commission and the budget town hall that we had as well. So maybe we can attempt another one.
Okay. Well, as far as town halls, I think those are great events, especially to get public feedback. But again, I would ask you to try to identify the issues. I think they're best if there's one or two major issues, and hopefully if there's two, they're related, so that we can talk specifically about that and fold that into future plans for the city. I have to say that we are all available, and we are, whether people believe this or not, we are approachable, willing to talk to people. I do see some value in the meet and greets. However, staff time is a consideration. Also, they got to be at a time when it's the public may be reasonably available. You don't do it at the beginning of the summer vacation and those kind of things with people out of town and holidays, etc. So I don't really have a problem with either one of the programs. But I think we just need to be very prudent as to when we schedule, so it's optimum for the council as well as the public to attend the meet and greets.
Well, why don't we work with city manager's office to see what, when might be a good time to do either one of those. And I don't know how much consultation we need to have with council to set something up. You may decide, why don't we have a town hall about this particular topic, and we'll just informally make a
and issues, we need to make recommendations on issues to be able to do a town hall effectively.
Yeah. As far as staff time for meet and greet, that typically does not take a lot, I don't think. I haven't asked for input from city manager's office, but generally it's, we're going to have it at maybe farmer's market, and we get permission from the farmer's market lady, Diane, and we get the materials over. I know Parks and Leisure staff is responsible. I think they bring us a tent and they bring us tables. So maybe, I don't know, do we need to do a breakdown of what it cost with staff time and figure that out? Or
well, I know the planning for the budget town hall was 10 minutes, me going to Jill and saying, hey, what do we need to do a town hall? And she said, how many microphones do you need?
Well, I think Judy did spend some time.
Judy did spend some time emceeing it, but it wasn't crazy. And then it was really on a lot of us to go out there and let it be known, and people showed up.
let's just do it.
It's got to be an issue-driven thing.
Well,
what town hall does.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the question is what exactly are you asking for so we can say yay or nay?
If council still would like to attend when we have meet and greets, do you still feel like that's a valuable enough contact to continue having it? That was my focus.
So we're not changing anything?
No.
I concur.
No, it was just,
I concede to that.
When folks are available, they attend.
Sure.
And if we let Judy's office know how many can attend, or if nobody's attending, then we cancel. So I don't know if Judy has anything to say about that, or yeah.
Mayor Mueller, Councilmember Calhoun, I'm not really that as concerned about the staff time. Now, tell me different after the meeting, but I'm more concerned about the effectiveness, and I think, there's been good, honest attempts to hold these throughout the community, different places, different venues, to try and reach out to as many people as we can, but it seems to me a venue like the Farmers Market is a more successful place to do that because you already have people coming out. It's not that difficult for staff to work in the park already, and at least you're going to have people come by and talk to you as opposed to continuously trying to find a place to hold it and then hope somebody comes. So I think that would be a more effective way of doing it.
I would add to that, too. Our city library, at least when we first started doing these, has been the most lucrative place in the world. There is more traffic there than at Walmart, and it's unbelievable. And I just appreciate that folks have commented about it's nice being able to make contact with city council that way. So we'll try it again.
Okay.
Try it the next couple of
So
times.
that's what I'm hearing is we're going to try it again, and we're going to look for subjects for potential town halls as well. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. All right, then we're going to move on to the item D, discussion of the council executive report. Mr. Patuchik.
Thank you, Mayor Mueller, members of the council. A number of items today. Obviously, the school district agreement was something that council's envisioned for a long time, included in your strategic plan. And I think that's a very good thing, but it was over a decade of trying to get to this point. Equally, if not more, more important is the stand-up of the CCOM facility. which occurred last Wednesday morning early, and Chief can back me up on that. It was a very successful transition, and the facility is up and running and running smoothly as far as I can tell. The Joint Powers Authority Board that I chair still has a number of issues to work out with regards to budget and funding formulas to bring on other entities within Cochise County, to include federal, state, and local partners. We have been approached by a number of people already expressing a desire to join CCOM. So once we get the funding formula figured out and approved, we'll be able to pursue those other partners, which then in the long run will help us to bring down the costs associated with running that facility jointly with the county. So very, very pleased with that. As the report mentions, we hired Mr. Bill Dugan, who has specific experience in this area of standing up joint facilities like this. And he is out of Kansas, and his wife has already found work with Cochise College as well, so we're very pleased about that. So I appreciate all the work. It was a large effort on the part of both city staff, PD, fire, IT in particular, and county staff, the Sheriff's Department, their IT folks, as well as Victoria's efforts and finance folks. So it's been a big effort on a lot of people's parts. So I just want to express my thanks to everybody for doing that. It is the wave of the future, and I think it will be a good thing for us to be engaged in. Secondly, we'll be attending a meeting at Arizona Department of Environmental Quality Thursday at noon. And then I'll be rushing back for the council meeting, so it'll be a good long day. But nonetheless, we've been going around with Department of Environmental Quality for a number of years regarding the potential need for what's called a ZIPDES, which is the state version of the EPA NIPDES permit for discharges out of wastewater facilities. And we've had a little bit of disagreement with ADQ in terms of whether or not we're even required of that. We're exploring the possibility of entering into or proposing to them a more general permit type as opposed to the specific one, which hopefully can save us some money and some time in implementation. So we'll be pitching that idea to them on Thursday and trying to get an idea as to whether or not they would like to entertain that. So this has been going on for a number of years now as well, but it's something that we need to resolve with regards to the future of what the council plans to do with effluent as we work with BLM. There's also another meeting with them scheduled here very soon that I'll be attending as well. So quite a bit going on in terms of water and wastewater. The recycle transition has gone fairly smoothly, unless Sharon tells me otherwise, but so far the public, I think, has moved to the new schedule fairly seamlessly, and I've not received too many complaints, at least in my office, about the implementation. So that's primarily what I have for my report today. Then.
Thank you, Mr. Patuchik. Questions or comments from Ms. Patuchik on the report?
Yes, I'd just like to thank Sharon for putting the SWANA, is that how you say it, SWANA, video online for us. That was very, very interesting, and it really answered a lot of the questions, particularly around why didn't we know this was coming? And it appears that folks all across the country, people who are in the field, sort of didn't realize what was really happening in this. So that video was very, very helpful. I think it's available to anybody online. Where did I get it? From the executive report, I think there is a link to that SWANA webinar. So it was very, very helpful and answered a lot of questions for me. And created a lot of questions, but I won't present those right now.
Okay. Anything else from Mr. Patuchik on the report? Yes, sir.
Yeah, always. I know we got an update on annexation, work session 2 ago. Direction, what do you need from us, Matt, to move it forward, close it out?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Mount, the math is laid out in the chart and depicted on the map. It's looking like there are 3 block groups that have some potential of success. We're close on value, but we still have a ways to go on signatures. We will distribute a schedule if you're interested in joining us on knocking on doors to canvass neighborhoods and try to collect those signatures. It's been a struggle tracking down the non-resident owners, and we're still working through that using the software that we have. But at this point, I mean, we've done multiple mailings, we've knocked on doors, we're flexing staff time to go out in evenings. My recommendation would be for us to concentrate on those sectors that have the most potential for success at this point in time, which would be sector 4, 6, and 8.
And then I know that there was the list of reasons why people were most concerned about the annexation. What is our plan or our strategy for counter messaging to try to alleviate those concerns, if any?
Well, we have a brochure highlighting the benefits of becoming part of the city, and we articulate those in our one-on-one meetings with the residents. Some are objective concerns and others are sentimental concerns or fears, regarding, how we're going to conduct enforcement in the future. And, whether we could assuage those concerns through propaganda beyond what we're sharing, I'm open to ideas. I asked Tina Moore to join us. She's the project manager for this endeavor, and we've been working closely together. And she's in a position to provide probably the best color commentary on what we're hearing in the field. But it was displayed on the last executive report. I don't think the reasons have changed. Is there anything to add beyond what's already been cited, or?
No, sir, there really is not. There's just a general mistrust of government. Also, there's a fear that taxes will go up, even though that our property taxes are lower than the Fried Town site. They're also a fear that they're going to lose their fire department. That's something that's visible right there in the neighborhood that they get to see. So those are fears that we're trying to combat.
And we do have an online calculator where people can plug in their information and it'll show what your tax savings will be by annexing to the city. So that's an objective thing we can demonstrate. But in terms of fears, we don't control the fire department. We don't control, government relation. I mean, in terms of code enforcement, I mean, we're going to operate the same way in Fried Town site as we do in any other neighborhood in the city. The rules are uniformly applied, but we're all ears. I mean, in terms of information we need to get out beyond what we're already sharing.
So,
okay, go ahead.
So, Tina, and this could be hypothetical, so I don't want to put you on the spot and ask for an answer right now, but maybe something that you can bring back to us is, what resources do you need in order to mount an effective messaging campaign that maybe specifically targets those who have whatever their concerns are? I think us as council members probably need to start getting some requirements, specific requirements on what we can do to help out. If it's talking to person A, B, or C. And here's the underlying reasons. We're asking a large group of people to trust us that we're going to provide a better value by coming in and being a part of our city. And anytime they say no, there's a piece of messaging in there that probably should be coming back to us anyways as representatives is, what are we doing potentially wrong, or what can we do to improve in order to get out there and change minds? And then it's up to us and y'all to figure out how to make sure that we keep our promises and we deliver a significant value in a safer place. So again, a hypothetical, but I know we see the numbers every month, and I think Matt, maybe reading some body language, a little bit of frustration maybe with where we're at with the project. So what can we do to reinforce success? What can we do to help you out? What more resources do you need? What other departments can you draw from in order to close this thing out successfully?
Well, on the resource side, we've been very careful not to make any promises. I mean, we do say that the neighborhood will be open.
I'm talking about resources
future
for you.
CDBG funding.
Resources for you.
In terms
Matt.
of capital expenditures.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what resources do you need for your project in order to close the project out successfully? Again, it's hypothetical. Do you need more, do we as council members need to prioritize where our marketing money's going, where the economic development people are going? Do the chiefs need to go out there and talk to people? I mean, do we need to say that we're cool with that? Let's make it work. Chuck, this is what we need to do in order to, it's a big project. I mean, that's what I'm asking, is what do we do next? How do we win? How do we make it successful?
Well, again, pathing through to the resident and having a one-on-one conversation is our best chance of being successful. That's been a struggle because most people aren't home during the day. There are a lot of rentals in that neighborhood, and it's hard to track down the ownership contact information given the tools that we have. If there's a way we can get that information, correct information, that'll increase our effectiveness.
All right. So how do we find out what we need and what it's going to cost to get it? And I'm not asking for an answer specifically right now, but I mean, that's where we got to start shifting.
Well, we're on our second software package for getting people's contact information. Tina, maybe you could share a little bit about the quality of the data that we're receiving through that service.
Well, it's a 50-50 chance. People are changing their numbers, especially the ones that are out of town. I'm not sure if we're getting the right information. I leave a voicemail. There are some in Canada that I can't get to. It's just difficult to try to reach the people. And also, I'm not sure if it's because it's during the work hours. They're also at work. But I've left several voicemails, and I haven't heard back.
A lot of people don't answer their phone anymore. Mm-hmm. That's a challenge. And they don't respond to messages. They don't respond to mail. They don't even look at their mail in some cases. So
then when do we pull the plug?
We have a year to collect signatures. I say we continue on until that year is up.
Okay.
And focus on those sectors that have the best opportunity for success.
Okay.
Yeah, I should have jumped in because I want to say that when after reading the executive report this month, I wanted to walk into this meeting to say, let's pull the plug. Let's save our losses, stop now, don't use any more staff time. I know this was a strategic plan idea, but it seems as though we're spinning our wheels now. After listening to the conversation, though, the idea of working on those, especially since so much time and effort has been put into this, perhaps working with the areas 4, 6, and 8 that you mentioned that show the best possibility of success would be the best way to go. And perhaps others in the community hearing about or seeing the success of working with that group would then be more open to becoming part of the community. However, I still have misgivings about continuing. It seems as though the numbers are bigger than what we could accomplish in 2 months. And being August and September to complete what we're doing, it just seems like there's too much left to do, too many people, not only too many signatures to still get, because it appears that we have the pretty high numbers for value, but not for signatures. It appears that the biggest piece of the problem is the out-of-state landowners, that they're the ones that are most unreachable. Am I kind of right on that?
You are.
And I don't see any, I don't see the door open to that getting any better. And if among, in that areas 4, 6, and 8, many of those signatures that we need are out-of-state owners, then it seems to me we should cut our losses. Oh, Chuck's got his hand up.
Mr. Petrucci.
Yeah, Mayor Mueller, members of the council, regardless of how the outcome of this, results, and I do agree with Matt's assessment that we should now focus on the areas where we do have most promise. The impetus for attempting this annexation primarily involved public safety. We had a number of residents come to us concerned about crime in specific areas of Fry, and those are legitimate concerns. Those concerns won't necessarily go away if we're unsuccessful in annexing. If anything, it will continue on. The numbers tell me, regardless of the, old time, feelings that people in Fry have, or, their sentimental feeling about the fire station, which is actually very minimally staffed and operated now. It's hardly a concern, and I don't know if that's just their way of talking about their community as opposed to being part of the larger Sierra Vista community or not. But, though, regardless of that, the numbers tell me we're reaching numbers in terms of valuation, which is half the test. We're not getting the signatures. The valuation really rests in the business community and the business type, buildings that are there. So it does seem that there is an interest, at least on the part of those, more valuable, in terms of assessed valuation holdings, that there is still interest. And, maybe this effort won't be successful, but I think we need to continue on. And even if it involves, annexing individual parcels or small pieces at a time, we still need to keep trying to chip away at this, because the crime problems and other things associated and property problems that are in there will only continue to get worse, not better.
Then I have to say then, how much are we participating in crime abatement in Fry already, and is that going to change anyway? If there's something bad happening,
let the chief address that.
Yeah, does the sheriff's department have to come in, or do we move in to?
So the responding there is an emergency situation when the sheriff's office cannot. For routine property crime type calls for service, that is not something that the Sierra Vista Police Department will handle. They'll wait for a sheriff's department deputy to respond to conduct the investigation. So again, emergency situation, especially with CCOM up and running, we will respond to gain control of the situation, but it's still the sheriff's department's responsibility to investigate the crimes that occur in that area right now.
And as far as the fire department, are we doing the majority of the fire department?
We do have automatic aid, but I'll let Chief York.
Oh, that's right.
As city manager said, their station's minimally staffed. They don't have a fire engine. They just run an ambulance out of there. So fire protection is provided by all 3 of our stations, are closer to that area than anything they have. So yes, we're doing the first due fire response over there already. They will often, kind of like Chief said, they will send a rig in or an investigator or a chief or something, because that is their area, and they will do the investigation and that kind of thing. But we do the initial response.
I see. And finally, what's it going to look like if one block gets Sierra Vista everything, and the next block gets nothing, and then the next block at Sierra Vista's, sidewalks or lamps or, lighting or whatever? How is that going to work?
Councilmember Calhoun, you're already seeing that in there, in that the areas that the city has successfully annexed, the infrastructure is better. There are sewers, the streets have been improved, we're working on lights, those kind of things. We attempt to work with the county on other things, but you're already seeing certain parts of Fry, have better infrastructure, and we're able to provide public safety services to those areas. So that is occurring. It was our hope that people seeing that would want to, enjoy some of those benefits as well. But you know, we have some you know, longstanding historical and cultural you know, things that are going on in there that people just don't, you know, want to see our law enforcement or our code enforcement people in there for a variety of reasons.
I have one more thing to add in this area. I think it's just one more. If we, you mentioned before about incentives, or maybe that's not the word you used, but
trade-offs.
Yeah. I was just wondering, I remember hearing quite a while ago when we first started talking about this, folks having this sentimental attitude about Fry and not wanting to lose that. What they commented on was their sense of community around being part of the, as I fondly refer to it, the Fry homestead. So I wonder if there is something that would be helpful in this whole thing, and you've heard more from the people than I have, but to offer a street sign addition that says Fry, you know, it's not historical, but whatever, something of that nature that would make that area still recognize that they're part of the old part of Sierra Vista. So that's...
Well, that's certainly something to look at, Greg.
Well, I'll just, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm done, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll just go back to my last closing thoughts on this. What I would ask is, I understand if we have to de-scope in order to find some measure of success. If we have to pull the plug, we pull the plug. Then it's not getting anywhere. I am concerned about the resourcing. If you have tools that aren't effective, then find tools that are effective. I think that, you know, if that's what it's going to take, then we need to figure that part out. But the biggest thing that I'm more worried about is the messaging, and it goes without saying. Look at, we talked about this when this whole process started, because they were in here. You know, we can't show up as the white knights trying to solve problems that they may not think are as big of problems that we do. And I don't know if it's a sentimental attitude. I think they're sentimental. They, you know, look, I've run into people in this city who will beat their chest red and raw on Sierra Vista pride, and I imagine they have very similar people who are living in that community. And when we're saying we're going to come in and solve all your crime and all your other fire problems and everything else, I don't know if that's the best way to message them. But I do believe that we can offer value. And I think what we have to do is find a way to offer the value up that we can, honestly. We have to know who the people are. Somebody knows who owns those buildings. If we're not hitting the right people who know it, then they're the wrong people to talk to, goes without saying. But I also know that we have the ability to market, and we have the ability to sell the community and get people in here. We do it every day. So again, I'll just come back to, if this is going to work, we need to start shifting gears, because the numbers have been kind of where they're at for at least a little bit. And I do sense the frustration. I do think that we have to be careful that we don't take their sentimentally as how sentimental they are to their community as something that's too big of an obstacle. But I also don't think that we should be overstating their problems either, because they may not think those are the problems that they have. Whether we think it or not is irrelevant. So
I want to jump in here and talk about annexation is really a long-term strategy. Years ago, when I came to the council and proposed that we have an annexation strategy, and we adopted a formal strategy, it was obviously a long-range strategy. I think we knew at that time, and just like we're discussing today, that there's going to be times where we're going to be disappointed. So part of the issue is, if in fact September comes, and I don't favor cutting it off 2 months early. I would just as soon run the table. If we don't get any areas annexed in, the positive side is we have identified those properties that are interested in annexing. We can look at another way to do it, which would be to either annex those folks in individually, or get pre-annexation agreements signed so that when we do have a large block, we can bring them in under one operation. But again, that's probably a piecemeal way and not probably the best way to do it. I think what we're trying to do right now is probably the best way to do to provide some of the support that the folks ask us for. So I'm not in favor right now of quitting. I think it's better to relook and see what else we need to do. We only have about 2 months left. And again, it's a long-term strategy. It's just like when we had the folks over here north of us. We failed to annex them a few years ago, and it wasn't by much. But again, it was well worth it because they actually have higher property values and weren't in need of additional services like the folks on the west side are. But we need to look at long-term and eventually going back to what the strategy is and continue to work the strategy till we can annex those folks in to the community. And there's different ways to skin the cat to get that done. So post-September, we may need to sit down and say, okay, what's the next step? How do we do this? Is there value in doing it? And go through the entire process again and figure out maybe we wait 2 years, maybe we wait 3 years, maybe we wait 5 years. But eventually we know that the only way the issues that are going to be resolved that the people brought to us is by working together. And the only way we can really be effective is through annexation.
And just one thing, I mean, our involvement and focus isn't just limited to Frytown. We are working with the Carmichael Neighborhood Association on an area-wide basis to make improvements. And hopefully through that example of progress, others will follow. And, just receptivity to the message is the challenge. Prying people's mind open to listen to us, to hear what we have to say is a challenge. And we can work on fine-tuning the messaging, but people come to us with biases. In some cases, don't even want to hear our pitch. Yep. And it's just going to be an ongoing challenge. And we just got to lead by example and show progress.
I like that.
What if we do go, or do we need to make any, what?
I still have the floor.
You have the floor?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
I was trying to get but if you want to keep going,
that's all right.
Right in there.
No, go right ahead.
I was going to move off the subject. Do you want to keep going on it?
Like to
go ahead. I've already spoken. You go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to make clear my personal opinions on this matter. I just have a couple things to touch on. And first of all, I certainly did not enter this program with the illusion that we weren't going to be working with bias and that this would be an easy process. I think we were very well informed by you and by other members of staff before even entering this process that it would be extremely difficult. We were working with people who rightly so call this area home and for whatever reason don't want to see any changes. So I'm actually pleased to see the progress that has been made thus far, especially with the evaluation. But there's obviously more work to do. You still have my full support, and I'm happy to help in whatever way that I can. And I appreciate the city manager and the mayor kind of bringing us full circle to remind us why we're pursuing this project. It's not simply because it would be a nice thing to do. It's not simply because of the appearance, which anyone who comes into this community can see the difference of standards, of infrastructure, of yards, front yards, backyards. The point in doing this is that the county codes are not sufficient for being in the middle of a city, and this is in the middle of our community. And so I think we always need to come back to the reasons that we're doing this: public safety, our infrastructure, our city codes. We need to focus on that, and I appreciate hearing feedback from the council on that.
So I was just going to boil it down to what, and I appreciate your words. They're really very helpful in trying to decide how to work with this. But I do think there is a need to narrow the focus to the areas that have shown the most success. And I do have a little, I understand the importance of the businesses wanting to be a part of the city. They get it. But it seems as though the housing, the folks that are living in that area are also, they're the most difficult to I don't want to put more importance on the valuation than on signatures. So, so my suggestion would be that we go with those areas that the community development feel have the most possibility. If we're going to stay with this, might as well narrow.
I think that's what they recommended us to proceed with, and I would agree with those three areas need to be the hot spots if we're going to get results by the September in the short time period between now and then.
And I also like your idea of pursuing pre-annexation agreements and maybe dealing with them on an individual basis down the road.
Yeah, and again, after the fact, if we're not able to acquire annexation, then that obviously is an option that we need to figure out if that's going to be our strategy, and I think that's a viable strategy.
And I'll add myself to knock on doors too, if that's of any benefit to the group.
All right. Anything else on this item? Anything else on the city manager's executive report?
Just one thing,
yes,
sir. And I don't even need really what I'd like to see. Thank you for putting the transit numbers back up. We've got some good data showing. Can we also start getting costs and revenue numbers? Ticket fares, et cetera.
I do have a couple more things.
That's it. I'm done. I know you
got
got a lot more.
report.
Executive report.
Go ahead.
Two things. The PD report was a little distressing in the number of social issue calls that PD is getting, and I think it's a rise in those calls. And before I ask any specific questions, what I'd like to see at the next executive report would probably be the best time, is all of the things that our police department is already involved in related to social issues. The different committees and different things that you're already involved in. Because a common comment is, well, what are the police doing to fix this? And, it's bigger than that. And I know there are community groups out there working with PD, and I think it would be good to have a report on that. And the other thing around PD, I don't remember seeing anything about opioids in the report this month, but I might have missed it. If we could have kind of an update on deaths and the use of, I never get that drug correct, but you know which one I'm talking about, Nalcon? Or?
Naloxone.
Naloxone. If we could kind of hear a little bit about what's happening in that area. Also, it's distressing on the number of suicide calls that you're getting. And I know, again, that's one of the groups you may be working with, but maybe just a complete report around those areas would be helpful to the community and to us. Thank you. If the council agrees with
anything else on the executive report? Okay. Then we move on to recent trips, meetings, and future meetings.
Do you want to hear about the trip I had with my grandkids?
Well, no. Official.
At another time.
Official.
Not right now,
stuff.
no.
I have pictures, too. I have pictures.
Well, you got to show the pictures afterwards. We'll hang around. Really, we will. Board and commission liaison updates.
Just real quickly. Can we get the commission empowerment plan, the one that we put together? I know I was at the Cultural Diversity Commission last night, and I know we had some changeover. We have some new commission members that have come in, but that got brought up, and they just hadn't seen it yet. So if it's during their in-doc, if they've got some way to see it. And all my commissions are full up, which is good.
That's great.
All right.
Congratulations. That's great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Environmental Affairs have the Environmental Merit Award, and I'm going to have to lean on you, Sharon, to say any deadlines or anything involved in that, please.
The application deadline is the end of the month.
End of this month. So if you have any organization that you think are doing exceptional work in reaching environmental goals above and beyond code, that would be real helpful to submit their information to Public Works, to Sharon. Thank you. That's it.
Anybody else? And the comment I'm going to make deals with both this item and the next item. I had the opportunity last Monday to meet with the Sister Cities Commission, and prior to that, I met with, at Gwen's request, I met with the Sister Cities Association. We're developing a memorandum of understanding with the Sister Cities Association, which will come to council, and of course we'll have a work session. And we want to have a joint work session with the commission, the association, and the council at some point in the future. And that's to talk about our working relationships with those groups. So that should be coming up here in another month or so, I would hope, maybe two, depending on the schedule. Any other future discussion items or council requests? Yes, ma'am.
I would like to make a request that we have a work session on meet and confer with the fire departments, the union, and talk about whether that's something that we would like to put forward as a council or not. That's not me.
Yeah, I know. So meet and confer, that's a request.
Mm-hmm.
Any comments? Everybody okay with that? All right, we can schedule a future work session for meet and confer. Anything else? Seeing no other business before the council, the meeting starts at 5 on Thursday. I know we have there's an event afterwards, and we'll try to be as efficient and effective so we can get those people, those 4 or so people that need to get to that. Was it 20 under 40, 40 under 20, whatever it is? Oh yeah. That's going on. Oh, yeah. And they assured me that they won't start the formal program until about 6:15 or 6:30, so we should be able to conclude our business effectively. So congratulations to those. At least there's 4 people in the room right now, and I know at least 2 or 3 others. So good job, sir.
No, I'm counting. I'm getting old, Mayor.
Yeah, no. Seeing nothing else before council meetings adjourned. Thank you very much, and thanks for attending, guys.